Hello and a very warm welcome to the late breaking F1 podcast presented by Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking. What is F1, Sam?
Mate,
I've forgotten.
Races, distant memories, like an oasis in the desert. Perhaps I might see one.
A mirage.
A mirage, simply a mirage. Yes, hopefully back, within a fortnight, we might be back. Oh, we'll be there. Have we mentioned it? I don't think so.
But I haven't said that one before.
I was sick to death of that joke. Don't worry, it's only 2 weeks left.
Yeah, that's the only reason I actually want to go to Texas now, is so we don't have to joke about going to Texas anymore.
Yeah, honestly, 1 week till we go, trying not to annoy everyone with my endless excitement.
Yeah, it is weird to think it will be race day.
Next recording, soon. You'll be here with me, and we'll be too excited to sleep like a kid at Christmas.
Yeah, that's a bit wild, isn't it?
That is wild.
Anyway, we still have some F1 chat. Don't you worry, folks. There's still plenty to keep us out of trouble. We've got fill in the blank later on. That's a game that doesn't make a very regular appearance, but
great one.
And the amazing jingle that goes with it, folks. That's one to, I was going to say not to miss, but it's probably one to miss.
I've heard it for so long, I've basically forgotten it. That's a good one.
It's an excitement for you as well as everyone else then. We've got F1 cancelling the rookie race in Abu Dhabi at the end of this season. Alpine and their out-of-sync development, our thoughts on that. Ferrari, upgrade plans, plenty of that to come as well. But we're going to start with some comments from Christian Horner and Helmut Marko regarding Daniel Ricciardo's exit from the RB team. He nearly lost his seat, according to this report, as early as the Spanish Grand Prix, if Helmut Marko had had his way. Marko lobbied for RB to replace him after that race in June. Christian Horner had this to say to the official F1 channel. He started the season roughly. Miami was a weekend of two halves. The Friday and Saturday morning was fantastic, and it looked like the Daniel of old defending against Ferraris and outdriving the car. But then the Saturday afternoon and Sunday were disastrous. Even around Barcelona, Helmut wanted him out of the car, and there was already a lot of pressure on him there. I've done my very best to buy as much time in the car to allow him to deliver. Otherwise, he would have been out the car much earlier. All the drivers are under pressure to deliver, but the reason that Daniel was in that car was to get himself back into a position to ultimately be there to pick up the pieces if Checo didn't deliver. And the problem was they both had issues with form at varying times. Checo started the season very well, and Daniel was struggling. And then obviously as Checo lost form, Daniel found a bit of form, but it was never compelling enough to say, okay, we should switch the two drivers. Sam, does it sound like there's more disagreements internally about how this has been handled and how it should have been handled?
I'm baffled that this is a conversation that's playing out normally, let alone in the public eye. It's once again, Red Bull as a family are airing their dirty laundry to the press. It's really odd to see Christian Horner and Helmut Marko essentially having a little war of words in form of the press management here. This is very showing of a negative culture that's going on at the moment across the family. And the most crazy part in all of this is that no one from the RB Visa Cash App team has been interviewed or asked or brought into the conversation at all.
The actual team itself.
The actual team that they are racing for. No Lauren Mekies involved or anything like that, who gets a say about their drivers. Not involved. Not even asked. Not even considered.
Don't even hide it that they're not two separate teams. Come on.
No. Zach Brown's having a field day. He's using it, getting his little evidence blocker out. Put that one in the drawer. Thank you. I feel a bit sorry for Daniel Ricciardo here because he was brought back, obviously, damaged his hand. So Liam Lawson got a fair crack at it, which I do think inadvertently put extra pressure on Daniel Ricciardo because Lawson was so good when he came in, because he was excelling in the role in that second RB seat. I think when Daniel Ricciardo got back in the seat and didn't deliver more than what Lawson could deliver, a lot of people kind of turned around and went, well, why are they putting this old guy into this junior team if actually the junior driver is just as good and has got another 15 years of his career left? And I understand that pressure. I don't disagree with that comment, really. It does make sense to me. But if you're going to commit to Daniel Ricciardo, then commit to Daniel Ricciardo and let him have the season to, really spread his wings, get out maybe the negative habits or the negative mindset that he picked up whilst in McLaren. And we know that McLaren for him was a very poor atmosphere. We know that he didn't gel with the team and the car. We know it was not mentally where he wanted to be, and he was struggling there. So he needs a bit of time to readjust and redevelop. So the fact that 7 races in, Helmut Marko's going, come on, sunshine, you're out of here, get out. That is savage. That is less time than Nick de Vries had. That is less time than what Liam Lawson had to prepare the second half of the season. We've seen drivers into RB that have had more time than that as well. And by RB, I mean Red Bull in terms of Albon and Gasly. They got more time, even with arguably worse form. it's a bizarre conversation to be having, especially when they aren't technically in charge of that team. But all in all, the team is meant to be a junior program. The team is meant to be there for developmental drivers. And we did question why Ricciardo was going into that seat in the first place, if not to just take the position off Checo. It's just bizarre that they're having this internal battle externally in front of everyone. I am really quite surprised just how far it's come that Horner and Helmut have fallen out to this degree that they're having to have this conversation in the press.
It would have been quite a valuable time as well to actually have a unified force by a couple of employees because of everything else that's happening. This was, I know it's not good news for Daniel Ricciardo, obviously, but they had the choice to present something of a united front, and they've decided not to, that's the baffling thing for me. I think it's fine to have these disagreements behind the scenes, and it makes sense as well based on Christian Horner's role within the organisation and Helmut Marko's role, in that Christian Horner has been team principal when Daniel Ricciardo was at Red Bull. He's seen what he can do. He was there for all of his wins, and he was the team principal almost winning alongside him. Whereas Helmut Marko is very much looking at, can my legacy be defined by the next Verstappen? Can I find someone else? Can I, he's in charge of that junior program. Can we find the next great driver in our junior program? And he's looking at Ricciardo as an opportunity or a missed opportunity for someone else to be in the car. So I understand why they're at different sides of the argument. But to your point, it's in public. And honestly, have Red Bull and the senior people agreed on anything externally this year?
It's really baffling the way they are. It's like they're going through a mucky divorce, and we are the children, and we're watching it in plain sight at the moment.
We are the children.
We are the children. Yes, they are having a row in front of everyone, and we have to sit there and watch them, throw the bed sheets out the car. They're screaming and shouting on the driveway. This should be done amicably in a business-forward way behind closed doors. And it's okay, like you said, for Horner to say, my interests are with the main team, and if Checo isn't performing, I need a driver ready to go. I understand that argument. Makes total sense to me. Fine, I get it. Helmut's there going, this is a junior team. We should be developing our talent, and that's where my expertise is. Again, makes total sense. Both sides make sense. You might butt heads on that. But the fact they clearly don't get along or don't see eye to eye to the point where they can't just have this conversation over a table is really worrying, I think, for more so than the likes of certain high team members leaving after long years of being there. But the fact that these two remaining stalwarts of Red Bull can't have an amicable conversation and come to a fair decision behind closed doors tells me that all is really not well at the moment in the Red Bull camp.
Is Christian Horner trying to wash his hands of this? Because obviously Red Bull have had some criticism from us and from others about how this was handled, particularly in relation to Daniel Ricciardo. Everyone knew it was his final race, but no one was allowed to actually say it aloud. And Red Bull are getting some criticism for that. Is this Christian Horner trying to say, hey, look, you can thank me for Ricciardo having the time that he did. If it was down to someone else, he'd have been out the car ages ago. So you know what? I'm not the bad guy here. Is there an element of that?
Christian Horner is a great wordsmith. He's so good at the public game. He's very good playing with PR. And let's face it, if you remove the scandal that has kind of tarnished a little bit of that, he's so good at bending and altering and changing perceptions and playing a certain role in Formula One. And this is a perfect scenario for him. He gets to say, Daniel Ricciardo, Mr. PR, who everyone loves, everyone adores Daniel Ricciardo. We on this show, I know we say funny things about him not being as good as he was, but we bloody adore the guy. And Christian Horner is quite, it makes sense to. He's jumping on the bandwagon of this moment where people are going, we love Daniel, you've not treated him rightly. And Christian's gone, this is a chance for me to get some good favour here. I'm going to put my hands up and go, hey, I kept him around longer. I'm the one that supports Daniel Ricciardo. I'm giving him all the time I can. I'm fighting his corner tooth and nail. He's the guy I wanted. It's an easy win. It is the easiest win going because he's not upsetting Checo because he never swapped Checo out. But he's not upsetting Daniel Ricciardo either. The only person who's upsetting is Helmut Marko. And publicly, no one cares if you upset Helmut Marko. As brutal as that sounds, that is the truth of the matter.
I think there is certainly an element of Christian Horner, I think, being backed into a corner. Because it seems like, from the outside, obviously we're not privy to a lot of conversations internally at Red Bull, or indeed any conversations. Yeah. But it does seem like Christian Horner is often fighting one corner by himself, whereas the likes, and he's losing allies, you know, Adrian Newey's obviously off. There are a lot of other senior guys who have Christian Horner to thank, at least somewhat, for the careers that they've had. And it's being left to Jos Verstappen and Helmut Marko, who are often not on the same side as Christian Horner. It does feel like Daniel Ricciardo was, I don't know, it was his responsibility almost. He needed a win for Ricciardo for him to claim. And I think maybe this was a case of holding on and hoping that something was going to turn around, and then Christian Horner eventually having to almost accept defeat that Ricciardo couldn't get back to the driver that he once was. But yeah, again, it's just, this all coming out publicly is probably the most bizarre thing in the world, because you're kidding yourself if you don't think that the likes of Andrea Stella and Zach Brown don't have disagreements. Like, they absolutely do. But can you name one instance where publicly they have been at each other's throats about it? No, because they don't allow it.
Yeah, the same team. James Vowles and Toto Wolff, and they were both at Mercedes, would have had these discussions and gone, well, I think X. Or when they brought on George Russell, or when they brought on Bottas, there would have been conversations of, oh, I don't know if he's the right guy. And someone might have gone, I think he's brilliant. And there would have been those conversations about who they should have brought in. Did we hear a word of it outside of that? No, never uttered a word. So the fact that we're getting this dirty laundry aired out in front of us, it's a sign of the times for Red Bull. They really are going through it at the moment.
In terms of Helmut Marko's perspective on this, I have to say, I don't agree with it, but I can understand it, because the whole Daniel Ricciardo experiment was based on, can he become what he once was? And we have seen instances, at least this season, where rookie drivers have shone straight away. Like, not really any delay between them coming into the sport and showing at least potential of what they can do. Like, they're not the finished product, but Colapinto race 2 was impressing. Ollie Behrman race 1 in Saudi Arabia, without all the practice sessions, did a good job. And I can understand Helmut Marko looking at those two instances, and indeed Liam Lawson from a year ago, and saying, why should we be giving time to someone who has been in F1 for not far off 15 years? Maybe we can accept some time to get back to what he once was, but equally, he's had all this time in 2023. He's now had races in 2024. I think Barcelona would have been too early, in my opinion. But I can understand the viewpoint from his side.
I think that's what is confusing me the most about this whole scenario. We know that they're a sister team, right? Everyone is aware that as much as Visa Cash App is changing its name and its identity, they're owned by the Red Bull family. They are a sister team of Red Bull. We see it all the time. The identity of that team feels muddied. It feels unsure, uncertain in both internally and externally. They came out at the start of the year, remember, we're going to get some top fives. We're moving away from being a junior team for Red Bull. We want to be our own team. We want to be competitive. And then the joke of the year, 6 to 9 months later, we're back here where we've had, Daniel Ricciardo stealing the fastest lap off McLaren. We've had drivers being turned around. They're having this whole conversation publicly where RB's team principal isn't involved in the lineup whatsoever. The worst part being Yuki Tsunoda not being mentioned in the slightest when it comes to any opportunity for maybe replacing Checo, who has more than proved himself this year. So I think they need to work out, and Helmut needs to be a part of this, I'm sure. What is that team for? What is the defining purpose in Formula One for this RB team? Are they going to be a separate team? If so, having an experienced driver like Daniel Ricciardo at the start of the year, before we know what his form was, makes sense to me. I get that. I understand that. But if they are purely for developmental purposes, Ricciardo should never have been considered for that seat, realistically. So it is a tricky battle. Both points make sense. But I think the issue is coming from no one really understands what RB are meant to be doing in the sport. And therefore, they're having a lot of mixed opinions on what is right for the team moving forward. There's no defined project there.
And I think the Ricciardo experiment, I've said before on the podcast, I was fine with this experiment of Daniel Ricciardo coming back to the team. I was fine with them giving that a go. And I don't mind that they've made the move now. My instinct is if he doesn't get injured last year, they make this move earlier, because 2023 was obviously quite fragmented from Ricciardo's side in that he had 2 races in the car, then gets injured, and then has a spell out, and then I think does the last 5 races of the year, and then obviously comes back for 2024. I think if he doesn't have that gap in between, I think they would have had less patience with him this year and maybe made the decision. I'm not sure quite as early as Barcelona, but maybe the summer break instead of now.
Yeah, I also think realistically he got lucky in the situation that Nick de Vries wasn't very good. Because if Nick de Vries was as good as Yuki Tsunoda and they were both delivering solid performances, as Tsunoda did for the majority of last year, Ricciardo never would have got a sniff anyway. They wouldn't have got rid of de Vries halfway through the year if he wasn't the same level of Tsunoda, I don't think. Unless Christian Horner really put his foot down and said, I want Ricciardo in one of these cars. And in that case, you sit there and go, well, Checo isn't performing at this point anyway. Put him in the Red Bull if you think he's got that much promise. He was the beneficiary of a bad situation for someone else, then broke his hand. And realistically, if they stuck by what the identity of RB Visa Cash App, or whatever we're calling it, is, Lawson should have gone in from day one. Because that's the whole point, right? He's a F2 driver. He's a, super formula driver, previous DTM driver. His time was ready. He should have gone in straight away. There should not have really been any faffing around with Ricciardo. But again, I understand the reasons why Ricciardo got the shout.
It is interesting to try and pinpoint exactly where all this starts from, but certainly looking at the Nick de Vries hire, I think the longer it goes on, the worse that decision looks, because, and we said it at the time, that Nick de Vries had the opportunity to be an okay driver in F1. He didn't, but he didn't end up that way, but he could have been. I think the issue was, obviously, he was much older than what the average rookie would have been in that seat. And I think the more that time goes on, the more you think, they should have just gone with Lawson from the start of that year, or Iwasa, or someone else. And you don't even get this whole situation. And Lawson is then given a lot more time. But it is interesting. One other comment I did just want to pick up on from Helmut Marko regarding Daniel Ricciardo was that he felt that Daniel Ricciardo had lost his killer instinct. Do you agree with that?
It's hard to measure, I think. When you're in a car as bad as that RB, and let's face it, it's barely been good enough to scrape points on a regular basis. When they have got points, it's either through a very good drive or it's been through a little bit of luck. It's hard to show a killer instinct when you've barely got a vehicle underneath you that can pull off a great overtake, that can run close enough to cars in front of you, that can actually be overtaken. You're fighting against the likes of a struggling Alpine, or you're better than a Sauber. You're better.
Well done.
Woo! Killer instincts. Yeah, what am I killing? A bloody fly on the floor that's lost its wings. That's kind of how bad those cars are.
That's fair.
It's literally like putting your foot on it and going, well, it was already dying, so I made it less painful.
Like a little housefly that's trying to stay alive for another hour.
Well, I'll put you out your misery. That's what it is. That's really what it is. It's not like he was, in that one race in Miami where he was defending against Ferraris. Yeah, he was doing a brilliant job. That is the exception. The car itself it's not like that car could do that every Grand Prix. It's not like if he outdrove that car every Grand Prix, he would be fighting for 5th, 6th, 7th. No, never going to happen realistically. The best he was ever going to get, maybe, on a good day, was a 10th place, and that's a really good day. So I feel like it's harsh to say that Ricciardo has properly lost his killer instinct when he spent the entire period of this experiment in a car that was probably no better than the 8th fastest car going, at push 7th on its real best day. So I feel sorry for Daniel Ricciardo. If you stuck him in the Red Bull for half this season and see where he finished, then I'd be interested to know. That would be more of a fair example on the killer instinct comment. I don't want to put Ricciardo down any more than he really needs to. He's already lost his seat this season.
I agree with you. This hasn't worked, but I don't think the reason is because he's lost his killer instinct. And mainly to your points, because I know Helmut Marko sort of referenced his old late-breaking trademark days back in Red Bull, and how good he was at those daring overtakes that maybe we haven't seen from him in recent times. But that Red Bull was far more capable of making those overtakes than the RB, Cash App, Visa, Toro Rosso that he's got nowadays. Like, it's not the same situation. Like, how many times have we seen Yuki Tsunoda make incredibly daring overtakes? Not that often. And even if you go back to Daniel Ricciardo before he went to Red Bull, when he was in Toro Rosso, he did well at Toro Rosso, don't get me wrong. But can anyone point to, like, a load of daring overtakes he made in that car? Not really. Like, it wasn't until he got a far better car that he was able to showcase that. So, yes, it hasn't worked, but I don't think the killer instinct is the reason. There have been multiple, and it's difficult to diagnose exactly what it's been. Like, sometimes it's F1 drivers age differently, and some can stay at their peak until they're 40, some don't. Maybe it's just this era of car. We've seen that with other drivers as well. It's difficult to know exactly what the reason is. Killer instinct, though? I don't think it's that.
Do you think if Liam Lawson goes in from the moment Ricciardo went in, so remove Ricciardo from the equation completely, and Liam Lawson gets the De Vries drive, but Liam Lawson's form is exactly the same as Ricciardo's form has been, do you think he's out of a seat right now?
No. Maybe at the end of this season.
Expectations are higher because it's Ricciardo?
I think it's probably not expectations, and it's more the stage of their careers that they're at. So we've seen actually, and I know Red Bull and AlphaTauri, whatever they're called now, don't have a reputation for patience. But equally with Yuki Tsunoda, they've been relatively patient. Like,
what, 5 years in now?
Yeah, and he has been better this season and last season than he was in his first couple of years. But they did give him a third year where I was unsure whether they would. Liam Lawson right now, if he'd been in the seat, from the middle of last season, would have had just over a year. I think they would have been at least patient enough to give him the full of this full season and then maybe reassess going into 2025. I think it's just based on Daniel Ricciardo, him having more experience and thinking, the development curve isn't going to be the same as what it is with Lawson.
Yeah, I suppose you could assume he would be starting off at a higher point, right? And it would maybe more be continuous rather than an upward curve.
I think so. Let's take our first break on this episode. On the other side, we're focusing on Ferrari. Welcome back, everyone. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has revealed the small upgrade for the car at the upcoming United States GP will be the team's last of the season. So, of course, the Ferrari team do remain something of an outsider for the Constructors' Championship. It's 75 points separating McLaren and Ferrari at the moment. Fred Vasseur then revealed the focus is primarily on next year's machinery following this Austin update. He said, "We all know that we already started the development of the next car, and we try to do our best to have small upgrades at the next race. I think it will probably be the last one for everybody. That will be true for us, but I think it will be true for the other teams too. Now, it's so tight overall in the last 4 or 5, 6 races. If you have a look on the grid, every single bit can make a difference." So it does sound like final upgrade of the season at Austin for Ferrari. McLaren have opened up a bit of a gap in recent times, but equally Ferrari have been there or thereabouts. Of course, they won at Monza. Will this give them a chance to compete with McLaren until the end of the year?
I think it is extraordinarily close, as Fred Vasseur said. It really is a matter of hundredths, not tenths. And I know Formula One, the gaps that we see across the entire grid is minuscule in comparison to any other form of sport. The expression always rings true. A second is a lifetime in Formula One. And that is so true. You look at some qualifying performances throughout the season where pole is being X time and the 16th place cutoff zone for Q1 has been 0.989 or something like that, right? Anywhere else in the world, that is nothing, literally nothing. But in Formula One and age. So if you could bring an upgrade where Ferrari are, say, 0.1 off in qualifying, and they bring that upgrade, and that brings that down to 0.03 in qualifying, and that gives them the extra little space they need to go on and maybe win races or secure double podiums. It's worth doing. It's worth doing, especially if these upgrades, these little upgrades, are able to directly then impact the development of the 2025 car with experiments. Maybe they're trialing something a little bit new, especially in Ferrari's position. They kind of don't have anything to lose here. If they sit there and go, actually, that's worked really well. We can take the evidence, we take the analysis, put it onto 2025. It's so close. We need to get ahead. Now's the time to do that. Why not do it? If it goes wrong for them, oh, well, we were already third in the constructors at this point. Leclerc was never going to go on to win the drivers at this point. There just isn't the space and the points for him to do so. So you know what? We've learned that upgrade hasn't worked for X, Y, and Z reasons, and we could develop a different way for 2025. I think anyone down to Mercedes right now, you either have to go for make or break. You could get so far ahead because 2025 is looking so close that you really could win the first 4 or 5 Grand Prix, give yourself that little leg up, as Max Verstappen has done in the Drivers' Championship this season. It can make all the difference come the end of the year, that if you just get that edge on your competitors, it makes sense to try something new, be experimental, give it a go. I think Ferrari and Mercedes especially have so little to lose by doing something bold and seeing if it could work for 2025. Feels like a bit of a no-brainer for me.
0 side pods. How about that, Mercedes? Yeah, I think maybe this has the opportunity to pull them level or maybe even get them slightly ahead. I'm not too sure. We've referenced this multiple times on the podcast throughout the year. The upgrades have been hit and miss so far this year. We're talking about Alpine upgrades, actually, on the in the next segment. And Oliver Oakes, as a spoiler, does say very much the same thing, that it's difficult to be able to count on upgrades reliably this year, and how much of an impact they will have, and even if they will have an impact, because some of them have had a negative impact on the cars. So Ferrari have had both. We've seen Ferrari when they went to Monza worked pretty well. They won that race, so they've had upgrades that have worked well. Equally, the Imola upgrade, I maintain that might be the reason they don't win the Constructors' Championship this year.
I think that's cost them silverware. Quite
possibly, or at least a chance for it. So yeah, it's difficult to know exactly how much of an impact this will have. They should keep expectations somewhat reasonable, because it is tough to see them really leapfrogging McLaren.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think there's at least a chance that this upgrade, if it works, they could be competitive for the last 6 races of the year.
Well, you said in our 3 words for each team, right? Was it 2 of the last 6, essentially, or something like, right? You said win 2 of the last 6, and if these upgrades get them across and it's competitive, sure. I just think you're a little bit silly, unless you're Red Bull or McLaren and you want to solidify actual title chances. I don't think risk it. You know, like, just go bold for the aim of gaining for 2025 rather than trying to solidify a title right here, right now. Unless you're those 2 teams where it does make you're in the no pun intended driving seat to take home that championship.
Do you think it's the correct upgrade approach given where they are right now?
Yeah, I do. I think it's surprisingly sensible. I think Fred Vasseur knows what he's doing when it comes to this developmental cycle. 6 races is enough time to see how things are working and apply either a new developmental cycle into the new year, or to focus on the areas that have become weak. And we've got a large array of tracks coming, right? You've got a lot of characteristics that you can look through coming up for the rest of the season. You've got Texas with the famous S's right in Sector 1. That is great for aerodynamic understanding, how the chassis responds. And yet you've got heavy straight lines on the street circuit of Las Vegas. You've got classic tracks in Brazil. There really is a whole sequence of areas that you can understand where the car can be developed for. So stop now, right before the end of the season, assess, and then develop appropriately for 2025. To me, as someone who is not particularly logical, that feels quite logical.
I'm unconvinced just based on, I don't know whether these upgrades are contributing to next year or whether they're taking away from next year. And I think the answer to that question determines whether this is a sensible approach or not, because I do completely understand his point about how close things are and how it has jumped up and down the order. You know, we've had 7 different winners from 3 different teams.
It should be 8.
It should be 8. Sorry, 4 different teams. And we've had 6 different winners in the last 10 races. Like, it has been very competitive, where we have seen quite substantial changes in the order, at least at the top of the championship. But I think that there is at least a little bit of a risk that Ferrari are trying to accomplish 2 things and don't accomplish either. So option 1 is to go all out this season and try and claim that Constructors' title. It's an outside shot for sure, 75 points between themselves and McLaren. But they have the opportunity to try and go all out with that, see if they can get it, and see if they can pit McLaren and Red Bull to the post. And then I think the other option is to say, you know what, Red Bull probably still think there's a chance they can win it. McLaren, of course, think they can win it. Maybe I'll just leave those 2 teams to duel it out, and we'll just quietly on the side just focus on 2025. As Fred Vasseur says, I'm a little bit worried that this upgrade might not have the impact to do the first thing, but might also take away from the second thing. But again, it's completely dependent on how this impacts next year.
Which I totally understand the point that you're making. And I think if we were in the 2025 season right now, I'd really agree with your worry. But because nothing is changing between this season and next season, pretty much all upgrades are directly comparable or transferable.
You would think.
So this is why I brought up my earlier point of they can be risky because they have nothing to lose. If they stay in 3rd, if this upgrade doesn't work and they stay in 3rd, but that means we get to January and they go, That didn't perform. We need to go the other direction. And they've got the knowledge. They've got the real hand knowledge right now. And they could go all guns blazing for the final season of this current regulation. And that does set them up to win a title. To me, that's worth it. That's a risk worth taking because they're not leading anything right now anyway. So if we get to the end of the season and they don't win anything, well, we go, well, they weren't there anyway. So they haven't thrown it away at that point. And that's the difference for me. But if we were going into 2026 and the chance was get a developmental boost ahead of everyone else for a whole new regulation change, or try and catch second and third and jump them both in 6 races, that's a heavy risk for what could be a very small reward in comparison to the next 5 years. So that's why I think it's worth doing now. Next season, if we have the same conversation, I think you're a fool.
Yeah. You fools. I think, I'm not sure how much Ferrari will actually care about this, but of course we've got Ferrari and I guess you could throw Williams in this as well, but Ferrari and McLaren have been 2 sleeping giants of F1 for so long. And I think for really since the beginning of this hybrid era, it's always seemed like Ferrari would have the best chance to win the Constructors' Championship first of those 2 teams. It might sting a bit that it's probably not going to be them and it's going to be McLaren who end their really long wait for a Constructors' Championship. We're still waiting, Ferrari. Come on.
Oh, it's what, 18 seasons it'll be? Since they won a drivers, and even longer since they nearly 20 years since they won constructors.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to go all the way back to Kimi Räikkönen.
It's a long old time. We were but boys.
We were but boys. I have to say, like, and we don't bring up betting or odds very often on this podcast. I did see Ferrari at 28-1 to win the Constructors' Championship this year. I don't think they'll do it, but I don't mind that.
You could have stuck a $5 on there, couldn't you?
Yeah, 28-1. That's.
Do you want to know a fun fact?
Go on.
I don't understand how betting odds work.
So if put a pound on, you get 28 back. So you know it's.
But how can they come up with the numbers? It's just in the air. There's nothing about it. It's just random. Not random, but you know what I mean. There's no proper sense to it.
Oh, there must. Well, if there was no sense to it, you wouldn't have profitable betting companies.
That's very true, but there's
a lot of advanced stat. Well, I mean, less in F1, I think, but a lot of
betting in Formula One is not a common combination, is it?
No, and I don't
hear a lot about it.
No, it's certainly more. I understand it as well because I don't know. F1 can be incredibly luck orientated, and you don't, and so much is hidden behind the scenes, and so much is car dependent rather than driver
boxing
dependent
or something like that, right? Where you can see these 2 people pitting against each other, and you know their stats and their history and their build up, but it's entirely human led. Yeah, Formula One is a tricky one.
Indeed. One other point on Ferrari, it does seem as if their porpoising, bumping issues have gone. Fred Vasseur alluded to that. How important could that be for next year's championship? Because this is an issue that's really plagued them throughout a good part of this year.
I actually heard Lewis Hamilton scream a sigh of relief. Yeah!
He celebrated more than when he won the championship.
7 titles on my back not hurting. I'd like my back to work, please.
That's what he was crying about after Silverstone.
I'm sorry. My back! My poor back! And now he's finally going to be able to walk after a Grand Prix. Thank God for that. No, this is crucial because these are ground effect cars in this current, regulation set that we're on. And the air pressure and the airflow that runs under the car is so crucial to maintaining downforce, to maintaining speed, not bottoming out as well is crucial because it allows you to hit consistent top speed, allows you to follow closely. There are so many integral parts to ensuring that your airflow under the car is maintained at a consistent rate to make sure that all your other parts that are on the car are also delivering in their optimal way. It cannot be understated enough, or should I say overstated enough, how crucial it is that the car not porpoising is essentially the foundation you need to build a strong car in this current regulation. So if Ferrari have a stable base and it's not fluxing and hitting the floor and jumping around, that is a fantastic jumping off point. And you've seen how well Mercedes have done since they stopped their severe porpoising. I'm not saying that they've gone on to win titles, but they've definitely got to better. This has been by far their best year so far in this new regulations. And it's the first year I think they properly cracked not having porpoising regularly on the car. So, yeah, essential, crucial, a brilliant thing to get over for Ferrari.
Yeah, I agree. It's so important because we often see that just one major design flaw can massively cost the team. And you can bring upgrades to try and work around it and make the best of the situation. But until you really get to the root of an issue like this and solve it in full, you're probably limiting yourself on what can be achieved for your team. We've seen, I know I joked about the zero side pod design for Mercedes earlier on. But again, like, they tried to work around that and there was just no point, because whilst they could make the odd gain here and there was just one massive issue that was holding them back. If this is gone and gone for good, that bodes pretty well for next season, I think.
Yeah, both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, I think, drive very much in the same way. They like to drive aggressively in a very safe car, a car they feel they have total control over. And otherwise, they both overdrive the car, and I think they both struggle with pace. So if you're going to give them a really stable base to essentially like a thrash the car around and it won't step out on them, that's a successful, opportunity, a little recipe for success for Ferrari next year.
Well, after the break, we are staying on the topic of upgrades, but we're shifting to Alpine.
It's our weekly Alpine segment.
Damn right. The one that was supposed to be on Wednesday's episode, and then they decided to do something else. Alpine replacing Alpine News is the most Alpine thing I've ever heard. Welcome back, everyone. Everyone's favourite team principal now, Oliver Oakes. Because he believes Alpine has more performance to show at the end of the current season, having been out of sync with its rivals on development. He said, "We know between now and the end of the year we have got some performance coming. After Spa and Zandvoort, you hope you can survive. This run of races was sort of what you had, but I think actually what you're seeing, we're a little bit out of sync. We were late bringing what we brought from some of the beginning of the season, and then you end up a bit out of sync when others have brought stuff. I hope between now and the end of the year we can at least show we've got some performance to come. Some people have brought big steps this year. Some have brought some that haven't worked. We've just got to actually see, when we bring it, how it performs." So, as referenced earlier, he's maybe being a bit cautious about, we do have some updates coming, but, maybe they work, maybe they don't. Who knows?
The new game in F1.
Yeah, I know, right? Do you have any confidence in Alpine that they will show something?
No, and I think this developmental plan also doesn't make sense to me. Unlike Ferrari, who are, able to have a massive risk versus reward moment where they could go on to win a title if they get one thing correct. The gap is that small. Alpine, you're the 9th fastest car. So developing for the end of a season, to me, doesn't make sense. If this developmental period that they're going through was to bring stability, it was to ensure that actually it sets them up for 2026, it helps them with those regulations, and they're looking for a new age of success, then I'd say fair play, Ollie Oakes. You've got some cracking episodes coming. Sorry if you don't understand what Holly Oakes is.
Does anyone?
Is it still going? Probably.
Sure.
You've got some cracking moments to come, and it makes sense to set yourself up for 2026, 27, 28, 29. Because you're so far behind. Look what Haas were able to do. I know that's a bizarre example because they've not exactly gone on to mass success, but Haas started well, fell backwards into nothingness, did not understand the regulations or the tyres or how the car was working. They took that year out, which was a disaster, but actually 2 years later, they're now regularly scoring points. They've got a team that makes sense. They've got a team principal that seems to very much understand the fundamentals of the car. And the drivers are having successful races, much more than yours, Alpine, much more than yours have been for a while now. And look where you were battling 2-3 years ago with McLaren. You get it right in the right moment, and you could have been fighting for a construction. Yeah, amazing. Ben's doing the scales if you can't see, if you're watching the video.
Yeah.
But it's
visual reference, that one. Apologies.
Yeah, as Alpine got heavy, all they did was look at push McLaren through the bloody ceiling. Stop trying to gain short-term wins. I don't understand the need to develop unless Ollie is going to come out and say, actually, we need to get this right in order to get our foundation in order to make sure that 2026 is a success. In that case, I understand it. This makes sense. But if you're just trying to gain a momentary piece of performance to keep shareholders happy or to keep Pierre Gasly happy, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Look for 2026 and actually have a long-term plan of actual development that is going to see you move up the table, not a one-off.
I know someone who'll be quite happy about upgrades happening this year. Esteban Ocon. He might be the only one, though.
Yeah. Woohoo! Thanks, guys. I'm going to take him and run.
We should absolutely focus on this season and this season only. I'm confident of that. Cheers, Esteban.
He'd love that.
Off you, out the door, off you go. You know what? I'm gonna say quite a bold statement here. It is tough to have any confidence in Alpine.
Oh, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. My evidence, if I can present it, is them. Just
they are the evidence.
They are all the evidence. Yes, they have struggled a lot in recent races. But if they do have some upgrades where others don't, and I think you've very rightfully laid out why it's maybe not a good idea, because even if it does see them gain a position or two, so what? Like, does it really matter? I think they can potentially be a factor for points again. They were, at least earlier in the season, not that bad in that they were at least challenging to be the 5th best team. Like, they were, a few races at least, them and Aston Martin weren't that far off each other. And it didn't last for very long, obviously, but it was a few races where you couldn't separate them by much. And Gasly and Ocon were getting some Q3 appearances. They were, they've had 6 Q3 appearances between them so far this year. There were 5 out of 6 races at one point where they did, at least one of them scored a point. So they had a good run. And then obviously, as Mr. Oakes testifies to here, the last few races have been pretty difficult for them. So I think there is a scenario where that midfield has been so close and the order's been tough to predict. We've seen Williams and RB have basically just switched. Haas, as you say, have been, to your 3-word summary, hit and miss. Like, that they were pretty good at one point, not very good at another, seem to be all right again. Aston Martin have kind of just been there throughout the whole year. But it has just changed a lot. It's been a bit of a jumble in that midfield. It wouldn't surprise me if Alpine can get some upgrades to work and be a little bit more competitive. But it does go back to the point of, so what?
Just get it right once for the new season, and you could probably jump the lot of them. If you do something correctly once in a good, big, proper
back
update.
to where they were.
Yeah, proper Sunday roast update. Everything on one plate, served on one day. Take it as you want. Cover it in gravy and enjoy it all in one go. Rather than, I don't want the roast potato, and then a week later I'll have the peas, and then a week later I'll have some carrots. That's not nice. I'll enjoy it as I eat it, but then I'll go, I would like the rest of the meal to come, actually. Just give it all to me at the start of the season. New Year's Day, I'll have a roast dinner, and off I go.
If each team was a part of a roast dinner, what would each team be?
That's a different episode entirely. New game. Formula roast.
I don't even know what Alpine would be. Just some
bread sauce.
burnt
I don't want
turkey,
it.
like just.
Oh yeah.
The driest thing known to mankind.
Salbara, the toaster that broke when I was trying to do the Christmas breakfast. Yeah, just left its packaging in the corner.
Oh man, yeah, I think you're probably right. That might be another episode. We'll move on to something else, which is the F1 rookie race that was scheduled to take place at the end of this year has now been postponed until 2025. It was supposed to be a one-off, non-championship race. Several F1 team bosses indicated support for the idea last month, and the tentative plan involved each team entering a single car for one rookie driver in a post-season sprint race following the end-of-year test at the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi. The F1 Commission, though, has agreed to postpone the plan, citing a shortage of time between now and the end of the season. Is this understandable?
Yeah, I can understand the reasoning behind it. It feels like not a hugely discussed topic, and it feels like they have kind of kept it under the radar a little bit. And I think that's because the sprint races that we currently have in Formula One, in theory, provide an immediate platform for rookie drivers to actually have regular races involved. And I don't think they want the cross-talking conversation there that sprint races could be a completely separate formula that allow 10 cars to race all at once by drivers who have never featured in Formula One, and they could get plenty of experience driving around in a Formula One car at an appropriate time in front of an audience. And here you've tried to shoehorn in essentially another Grand Prix that no one's going to pay to watch, no one's going to be able to really spectate on, and it's going to cost more money and time for a lot of teams after the longest season we've ever had in Formula One. It feels like it was always leading to a negative conclusion. The idea to give rookies more race time in a Formula One car makes total sense to me. I think that, in theory, is a brilliant concept. I'm all for it. But I do think there are better ways to do it. And this does feel like it's been chucked together and they've gone, actually, it's not going to play out this year. So we're just not going to get it done. It's a shame. It is a shame because it would be nice to get them more experience. But it just feels like they've tried to stick it on the end of something that is already incredibly difficult, tiresome, money-consuming. It was never going to play out. It's never going to be a priority.
Yeah, I am fully aware that we could be in a position here of slating the FIA slating F1 and the FIA completely on this, whilst we sit in our chairs on our podcast, not having to deal with any of the consequences of the logistics.
Oh, look at us, armchair warriors.
They should be able to do that simply, honestly. Yeah, we don't have to deal with any of the logistics, and it's not an easy thing to put together. I will fully accept it. It's not an easy thing to put together because as soon as you open up to a racing situation, you have to treat it like any other race on the calendar from a safety perspective. You cannot cut corners because no one's at the track or I don't know, it's not a championship race. Like you cannot cut corners when it comes to safety. Everything has to be treated the same way. So I do understand this would have been tricky to put together. It is still 2 months away, and this is a big F1 big organization. Like
really?
They have resources. I will say that.
I thought it was just Ben Sullivan.
Oh, could you imagine? I would have had a little bit more sympathy if it was a smaller organization or a smaller series trying to do that, but it is F1. Like, this is the same series that 2020 is a good example. 2020, they basically just had to not make something up, but they had to walk
together a calendar.
Exactly. They had to pretty last minute go, all right, we need something for 2020. Here we go. I am convinced that if F1 really wanted this to happen, like really, really wanted it to happen, they could have made it happen. Like,
I think they could have televised it, so I think they can make a thing about it. Discount price tickets for the track. You know, maybe it doesn't have to happen at Abu Dhabi. Maybe it happens at Silverstone or something else, because maybe you could bring an F1 race to an old track that goes, we'll take it. We're quiet this time of year. We'd love it. There's loads of options. And I imagine it's a good way to maybe put new people across the team in to see their proving ground. You know, maybe a new team race engineer or something like that who's up and coming. You could do a lot with it. And I just feel like they've gone, oh, we ain't got enough time. Put it in the bin.
Yeah. It's not exactly been a surprise either. Like, this has been spoken about for a little while now. And like I said, it was pretty much unanimously agreed last month. So that's a good amount of time between then and the end of the season to put this together. So, like I say, I think if they, with all of their resources, all of their money, if they wanted this to happen, they could have made this happen. Instead they're postponing it. And maybe there is something in them wanting to manage what this might open up to. Like, if it's a standalone event and nobody wants it to be anything more than a standalone event, that's fine. But maybe there is a danger that people see this and go, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we can do more of these. Maybe it can open it up to this. And F1, I think at that point, might have said, we're not ready for that. So maybe they're spending the next year thinking about what the consequences of this action could be. And if those unfold, we're a bit more ready to deal with whatever that is. Maybe.
A little way that I think this might be able to work more seamlessly is actually, instead of doing it at the end of the season, you do it at the start of the season as one of the final days of pre-season testing. And they essentially get to use the new car after the 2 or 3 days, or whatever it is that we're testing for, and they get to have a 30-lap race around whatever track we're going testing at. You know, to me, that's a nice way for them to get more race data. It makes sense. You treat it as a race, but at the same time, you use the analytics behind it, and that way it seamlessly fits into another day that already exists, and you gain something from it.
Yeah, and I think as well with this post-Abu Dhabi test, of course, it will happen, or it would have happened, I can't remember the exact date of the last race of the season, but early December or late November, whenever it is.
12th or something of December, this would have happened.
So at that point, all the decisions for next year are made. Drivers, like, in terms of who's in the seats. So it wouldn't have impacted anything there. And at least at the beginning of the season, you probably haven't made all the decisions for, unless you've got multi-year contracts, which some teams and drivers do. But if you've got anyone's contract who's expiring at the end of that season, then that information is arguably more helpful from a pure driver perspective to the teams than it would have been in December. So
yeah,
there is
at
that.
least the team gets a proper benefit, not just the rookie driver. Sure. But we've discussed this enough. We know so many ways that rookies can have more involvement, and they just don't seem to be willing to look at those examples.
Yes, quite possibly. Right, let's take our final break on this episode. On the other side, we're playing Fill in the Blank. Now we see, does Ben have the theme for Fill in the Blank?
Here we go, because I can't remember how it goes well enough to sing it live.
There's actually a character count on the soundboard, which means for some of our longer named games, I can't fit the full title in. So this is the theme for FITB.
What is F1 Alphabetti?
Good question. No, Alphabetti fits. Just Alphabetti does fit. I'm actually gonna have it. So we've got dotted for driver of the day, obviously, and we're dotted.
That's classic abbreviation.
Putb, pump the brakes. But yes, fill in the blank. Are you ready, Sam? I'm
ready. And bring on the beauty of this soundtrack.
Here it is.
F1, fill in the... That is the worst one we've ever done.
Who's Phil?
That is so bad. Why is there a cockerel?
I can just hear something. Hang on. That's Kirsty resigning. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that is really atrocious.
It is. But the game is at least a little bit better. Fill in the blank. So we've got 3 sentences, and we'll have to fill in the blank with whatever we think goes there. So the first one is this. The driver most in need of a strong finish to the season is blank.
I actually am going with Sergio Perez for this. I think as much as he has a multi-year deal signed at Red Bull, a contract at Red Bull is as good as, a lump of cheese in the sun.
We heard Christian Horner earlier saying that Daniel Ricciardo should have been there to pick up the pieces if Perez didn't perform, right?
And it feels like they would have swapped him had Daniel Ricciardo been performing. If Daniel Ricciardo was having the drive of his life, they would have swapped them over, I think. There's no doubt about it. So for me, he's got to nail this last 6. And if someone like Lawson comes in and absolutely bodies Yuki Tsunoda and has a great time, I do genuinely think they wouldn't say no straight away to putting Lawson in Red Bull.
Interesting. I've also gone with the Red Bull family. I've gone with Yuki Tsunoda.
Interesting.
So I think at the moment, his position in the team is a very odd one, because if you think of Red Bull and RB, what's happening? So Daniel Ricciardo's just gone. Liam Lawson's just come in. We've got Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff flirting with one another. Max Verstappen and Aston Martin flirting with one another. Verstappen's contract up at the end of the season. Adrian Newey is going. Jonathan Wheatley's going. Sergio Perez, as you've just referenced, isn't very secure in his seat. And I think Yuki Tsunoda might be the only constant at the team. He's just there like, all right, I'll keep doing my job then.
Literally never gets mentioned in anything.
Well, yeah, you referenced that earlier on. And he's just kind of the only one piece at the moment that there's not some drama going on. And he's just there sort of plugging away, just doing what he can do.
Both a positive and a negative, I suppose. He's kept his head down, but also he deserves to be spoken about as an option for things.
Sure. Unless Liam Lawson comes in and does a very good job against him. Yes. And that's why I think he's maybe the most under pressure, because he's done a very good job against Daniel Ricciardo. But we saw versus Lawson last year, it was pretty close. Like, there wasn't much in it. I know Tsunoda had some rotten luck when Lawson was in the car last year, so there wasn't as many reference points as we thought we might get between the two drivers. But I remember the Japanese Grand Prix, where I think Tsunoda finished 10th and Lawson finished 11th, but they were separated by maybe like a second at the flag. They were very competitive with one another last year. I think Tsunoda's value to the team drops a lot if Lawson comes in and then suddenly he's not the next man up.
Yeah. Very quickly can change.
Next question. Max Verstappen's chance of winning the championship this season is blank %.
I've gone with 45%. Ooh. Just under half. I do feel like Lando Norris is the favourite now to take this. Even though Max doesn't need to win a race, I don't think that Red Bull should be finishing second anyway for the majority of the Grand Prix coming up. I think Ferrari are faster. I think Oscar Piastri is comfortably faster. And of course, Lando Norris should be winning multiple Grand Prix for the end of this season. I actually think it's a tall order for Max Verstappen to finish in second place, let alone higher for the rest of this season. So he'll do a great job to win this title. He'll have really done it all in the first half. Should he have gone ahead and won this title? Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. He had us in the first half, and he did. So I'll be impressed if he wins this.
So at the moment, even though it's close, you think there is just about more of a chance that he doesn't win it than he does?
Yes.
You British bias, you.
Yes, I've definitely shown that on the most recent shows.
I'm a little bit more confident. I'm going with 75%.
Oh, that's too confident.
I think he can. I think he'll see this off. I think the points mark. If it was closer points wise, then I think there's a good chance he loses it. But I don't know if he keeps doing what he's doing, like at Singapore and Zandvoort, and that is a question mark. We'll see. I just think the others have left themselves just a little bit too much work to do in the Drivers' Championship. I can't see the Constructors' Championship going back to Red Bull, though.
No, I think that one has come and gone.
And the last one on Fill in the Blank. Sergio Perez posting the "I'm not leaving" Wolf of Wall Street clip is blank. You might want to, for those that haven't seen this, Sam, quickly fill in the details as to what's happened. But what's your answer as well?
Yeah, so if you aren't aware of the "I'm not leaving" meme, it's from a film called Wolf of Wall Street, which you may or may have not seen, in the sense that the main character in the film, it's speculated that he's broken the law and that he might be getting fired by his own firm, and he walks back out of the meeting that he has into the crowd of adoring fans. And that's the point. They adore Jordan Belfort, who is the character here. They adore him. He's like their leader, their king. So that Sergio Perez is not at Red Bull, and he's picks up this mic and there's a dramatic moment. He goes, "I'm not leaving." There's a swear word in there, which I'm not going to put on the podcast. And it's this big uproar of like yeah, the king's staying, the man's here. Woo, we love this guy. He's our future. There's a lot of things you could take away from there. I'll let you make the difference, the comparisons between Checo Perez at Red Bull and this man in Wall Street in the 80s. It made me cringe a lot. You know, it really did. One, it was barely spurred on by anything. It's not like he'd signed a contract and the same day posted this clip where I would kind of go, all right.
I think he's probably referencing some rumours that he was set to announce his retirement at the Mexican Grand Prix, which was also a rumour that happened last year.
And then he crashed. So that's good. Yeah, so I found it really difficult. It felt very, I don't know, like FIFA YouTuber, bit childish, a little bit lame, you know, clickbaity for likes. Not what I expect from a professional racing driver. I love a bit of banter. Good laugh, good banter. Alonso Hamilton, back and forth. That's great banter. Checo posting a Jordan Belfort "I'm not leaving" meme. On one level, it is funny. On another level, very, very sad. Just do better at your job.
I thought it was fine. Like
No.
When I say it was fine, I was like, I didn't find it that funny. I also didn't cringe at it either. I was like, yeah, all right, why not?
Oh, it made me go.
Fair enough. Like a proper lemon in mouth vibe.
Yeah, exactly. A sour sweet, like a tangfastic moment.
You did the sour face meme there very well without knowing. I don't know. I thought it was okay. The only reason I was okay with this is just because it goes back to the point of drivers being so media trained, and this was the complete opposite. Like, this was Sergio Perez going, "I'm going to post this because I think it's funny, and I'm not going to get approval from anyone."
Yeah, the PR team definitely didn't see that before it went live. God Lord, no. It's just, you know, imagine Juan Pablo Montoya posting that about the rumors of him leaving McLaren.
Oh dear.
It wouldn't happen ever.
Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in as well. Well, that's Fill in the Blank. That's our podcast. We've got another 2 episodes, Sam, before we're live showing it.
Oh my God, is it that close already?
Unless I've got something wrong.
We've got, what, 1 this week?
Yeah, Wednesday, Sunday.
Next Sunday. Oh, good Lord. That is the live show.
That, yeah.
Folks, just to be aware that live episode will be a later in the week one than normal. It will go live on a Thursday night, not a Wednesday night.
It'll be a day late and...
not $1 short, that's for sure, baby. Yes. You'll have a great time. Thanks for listening, folks. We appreciate you all sticking around. How many of you stick around for non-race weeks now? It's crazy. Our numbers generally are through the roof. We are in our most successful period ever. The show is bigger than ever. And a lot of that, all of that, really, is down to you lot that stick it out multiple episodes a week listening to us waffle on. So our love to you. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to support any further, the best way to support the show is to join Patreon. The link's below. There are 3 tiers. We like to think in this day and age that it is quite affordable for the amount of content you get. And we do make really good content. We're really proud of the content we make on Patreon. No jokes here. Genuinely, we put a lot of work into it. So if you do want to check it out, it helps us out massively. Discord's available. If you want to just chat to more people, to us, we're in there as well. Then Discord's available as well. Links in the description. You can send us stuff in the PO box if you'd like. You can watch this on YouTube at Late Breaking F1. And you can follow us on social media at Late Breaking F1, where we do post many things about the show, our silly life updates, all sorts. So check it out. Come have a laugh with us. We really appreciate it. I think that's it. We'll be back midweek. Ben, is there anything going on midweek that the people should be aware of?
Oh, we are doing a Patreon episode midweek, so that helps the Patreon plug. We're at it, and of course, Beer Breaking this month. We're going to do it in Texas, so we're going to be in the same place in a different country. Which last year's Beer Breaking was interesting, so I'm sure this one will be as well.
Yes, Texas drunk is best drunk.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. All right, folks, thanks so much for listening. We will be back midweek, and we'll see you there, I'm sure. In the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage,
and I've been Ben Hocking, and remember, keep breaking late.